Welcome back to another episode of Teves Development. Today we're going to be going over if-else statements. This is a type of control pattern in Java. It's going to be useful in pretty much every program that you write. So let's dive into it. Essentially, what if-else statements will allow you to do is say, if a certain thing is true or false, we want to do this specific thing. Otherwise, we want to do something else. So for example, we can do this to create a grade calculator. So as most of us know, if you get a 90 to 100% in a class, you get an A. If you get a 80 to 89.9%, you will get a B, and so on and so forth. So we can do this by using if statements. So let's start with a new class. We named this if-else practice. You can name it whatever you want. And of course, we have our main method to run our program. So let's get started. First, we're going to be using a scanner to take in user input. If you are unsure what a scanner is, I have another video detailing what a scanner is. Essentially, what it will allow us to do is take in user input, which we will need to know what type of grade the person got. So we'll go ahead and import this scanner and we will name it scanner. Next, we want to prompt the user on what we want them to do. They're not going to know what to do unless we prompt them. So we'll do something along the lines of this. So we can do this, and now when we run this program, great, we'll say, welcome to grade calculator, please enter your grade. You'll notice that the program terminated. We did not get any user input. It's because we're not actually using the scanner yet. So why don't we use that? We want to use a double type, so we'll do double grade equals scanner dot double. And what this is going to do is we're going to use the scanner to get the next double that the user enters and store it inside of grade. So why would we want a double, for example? Let's say that you get a 79.2 on a exam or in the class, and you want to score that to see what you're going to get. That would be a C, but if we used an int, those cannot take decimal points inside of that type. So we would use something such as a double to have double precision on our grade. Great. So why don't we do this now? Just to make sure everything's working so far, we'll print out grade. And now when we run this, we should see welcome to our grade calculator like we did before, but this time the program should not terminate and it should allow us to enter a percentage. Cool, so we can put in, for example, 72.7. And it feeds us back 72.7. So we're storing that grade correctly. So now let's get into the if statements, what everyone has been waiting for. So we can start this by saying if, and then we'll do brackets. If grade is greater than or equal to 90.0%, then we want to print out you earned an A. So right now, how this will work is if grade, when we enter in a number, is greater than or equal to 90.0, we will use this system.out.println you earned an A. Otherwise, the program will just terminate because there's nothing else to do. So why don't we give that a try real quick to see if it works. So if I put in, let's say, 92.5, look, you earned an A. Great, so it looks like that's working. Let's run it again and enter something outside the range. Let's say 72.0. So as you can see, nothing printed because we don't have any code that's supposed to execute when 72 is entered. So this is just a fancy way of saying something like true. All if statements will evaluate to either true or false. So right now, if we ran this program, this if statement would always run no matter what because we're passing in true to it. On the contrary, if we put in false, this if statement would never run because we're always telling it not to. So something like grade is greater than or equal to 90 is just evaluating to true, and then we'll run this. Or it's evaluating to false, and we go to the next line of code, which in this case there is none. So down to its core level, all an if statement is doing is checking if what we're passing into it is true or false. So now let's check if a user gets a B. So what we can do here is we can do else if, and we can say if grade is less than 90.0 and grade is greater than or equal to 80.0, then we would tell the user that they got a B. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this. What is an else if? An else if is another control statement that says if this is false, then we will check this one. But let's say that this if statement was true, then we will ignore all of these else ifs altogether. So just to reiterate that, if this if is true, then we're going to print this out and ignore all the other else ifs. On the other side, if this is false, then we will move to the next else if. And if this is false, let's say we have another one, which we will, then it will move into that one. And if that one is true, then it will print out whatever that has. So now we need to check for C, correct? We could do this pretty easily if we copy this guy, paste it, and if our grade is less than 80 and our grade is greater than or equal to 70, we will receive a C. We can do this again, and we can change this to 70 and this to 60, and this will be a D, and we can do this one more time, change this to 60, this to 50. Let's think about that for a second. If our grade is less than 60 and our grade is greater than or equal to 50, that is an F, correct? But an F can also be something less than 50. So we actually don't need this to be 50. We would want this to be 0. The reason because is anything greater than 0 but less than 60 would be an F. Anything less than 0 generally doesn't exist. I don't know any sort of grading system that has negative points in a school-like setting. So let's go ahead and capitalize this. And why don't we give this a try? So let's enter something along the lines of 52.5. Great. So we earned an F. So let's think about this for a second on what it did. We can actually do this by running the debugger, which is right here. We can enter a grade. Let's say we want to break on the D scenario. So we'll put in a score of 64.8. So what the program's doing now is it's going to be checking this grade, right? Is grade greater than or equal to 90? we can see that this evaluates to false, which it should. So what's going to happen is we're going to move to this next if statement. So if we jump to that one, now we're checking again. Is grade less than 90? Yes, that is true. And is grade greater than or equal to 80? No, that's false. So if we have a true and a false, this is going to evaluate total to false. So then we would move to the next one. Is grade less than 80? Yes, that is true. And is grade greater than or equal to 70? No, it is not. It's 64.8, so this would be false. So a true and a false, again, would evaluate to false. We'll move to the next one. Is grade less than 70? Yes, that's true. And is grade greater than or equal to 60? Yes, that's also true. So we would go into this control statement and print out D, and then the program would skip this last else if statement, and we would be at the end of the program and it would terminate. And we can come here and see you have earned a D. But let's think about this for a second. What if we put in something like 689%? We earned an A because it is greater than 90%. You can get over 100% on some things, so we'll leave that. But let's say you got a negative 39%. We would get nothing, correct? This negative 39% doesn't fall under any of our if statements. So why don't we do something called an else, which catches everything else? So if what we pass in, if all of these else ifs and ifs evaluate to false, this else statement will run. Otherwise, if any of these if or else if statements evaluate to true, we will skip this else statement. So why don't we do something like, this is not a valid grade. So now if we run this again and put in negative 39.0, we would get this is not a valid grade. So this is a quick overview of if statements with else ifs. We could do the same thing if with doing something along the lines of a bunch of different if statements. What this would do is this would actually check every single if statement. So like I said earlier, if you have an if and an else if this is false, it'll check the else if, and if this is true, then it will skip all the other else ifs. If we have just if statements the whole way down, it will check every single if statement no matter what. So this kind of comes down to the lines of, if we know one of these is true in this section, that we can skip the rest. It just makes our program a little bit more efficient, but both of these would accomplish the same result. That's if statements. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like the video if you learned something new. Subscribe, it really helps the channel out. And I'm going to leave you with one question. Let me know what you're going to use if statements for in your first program. Thanks a lot for watching.